She looked like any normal kid. Messy braids, cartoon shirt, coloring books scattered around seat 12F. When their airplane started falling from the sky, nobody expected help from an 11-year-old. Then F-22 fighter jets called out "Thunder" over the radio. Every passenger stared at the little girl. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. 11-year-old Alex Thunder Williams sat in seat 12F of United Airlines Flight 1847, looking exactly like what everyone expected to see, a kid traveling alone. She had messy blonde hair tied in 2 braids, wore a faded purple t-shirt with a cartoon character on it, and carried a small pink backpack covered in sparkly stickers. Her legs barely reached the floor, and she was reading a children's book about dragons while quietly sipping apple juice. The flight attendant, Mrs. Rodriguez, checked on her every few minutes. "Are you doing okay, sweetie? Do you need anything?" "I'm fine, thank you," Alex replied politely in the high, sweet voice that adults expected from children. "My grandma is picking me up in Chicago." Other passengers smiled at the well-behaved little girl traveling by herself. A businessman in 12E offered her his extra bag of peanuts. An elderly woman in 12D asked if she wanted to see pictures of her own granddaughter. Everyone treated Alex exactly like what she appeared to be, an innocent child on her first solo flight. What none of them knew was that Alex Williams held one of the most classified positions in the United States military. At 11 years old, she was the youngest person ever to receive pilot training, and she had been flying experimental aircraft since she was 9. Her small size and young age made her perfect for testing tiny unmanned combat vehicles that adult pilots couldn't fit inside. Alex's call sign Thunder had been earned when she successfully completed a test flight that had killed 3 adult pilots before her. Her reflexes were faster than any grown-up, her fear responses were different, and her brain processed flight information in ways that amazed military scientists. But Alex's work was so secret that even her own family didn't know what she really did. To them, she was just a smart kid who went to a special boarding school for gifted children. Only a handful of people in the entire military knew that America's most advanced combat aircraft were being tested by a 6th grader who still lost teeth and loved cartoon movies. Captain Sarah Chin had been flying commercial airplanes for 12 years, but she had never experienced anything like what happened at 1:30 p.m. over Iowa. United Flight 1847 was cruising peacefully at 38,000 feet, carrying 156 passengers from Denver to Chicago, when Captain Chin felt something that made her blood run cold. "Mike," she said to First Officer Mike Torres, "are you feeling that vibration?" First Officer Torres immediately noticed what Captain Chin was talking about. The airplane was shaking in a way that wasn't normal, and the vibration was getting worse every minute. "That's not good," Torres said, checking the engine instruments. "Engine number 2 is showing abnormal readings." But before they could figure out what was wrong with engine number 2, engine number 1 started having problems too. Warning lights began flashing on the instrument panel, and alarms started going off in the cockpit. "We've got major engine problems," Captain Chin announced. "I'm declaring an emergency." "Chicago Center, United 1847 declaring emergency," she transmitted to air traffic control. "We have engine failures and are requesting immediate assistance." "United 1847, Chicago Center copies your emergency. What are your intentions?" "We need vectors to the nearest suitable airport. We may not be able to maintain altitude much longer." As Captain Chin and First Officer Torres worked through their emergency procedures, the situation got much worse. Both engines were losing power, and the airplane was becoming harder and harder to control. In seat 12F, Alex felt the changes in the airplane's movement immediately. Her training had taught her to recognize the sounds and feelings of aircraft in trouble, and she knew that Flight 1847 was in serious danger. But Alex's orders were clear. Never reveal her identity, never let anyone know what she could do, never break her cover no matter what happened. Too many secret projects depended on people believing she was just a regular kid. Even if it meant letting 156 people die. When United Flight 1847 declared an emergency over Iowa airspace, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, immediately began tracking the situation. A commercial aircraft with engine failures was automatically flagged for military attention, especially when it was flying near sensitive military installations. "Sir," reported Major Lisa Rodriguez to Colonel James Parker at NORAD Command, "we have a commercial emergency aircraft that may need to make an emergency landing at Offutt Air Force Base." "What's the situation?" Colonel Parker asked. "United 1847, 156 souls on board, experiencing multiple engine failures." They're requesting emergency landing clearance. Scramble F-22s immediately, Colonel Parker ordered. I want that aircraft escorted and monitored. If they need to land at a military base, we need to be ready. Within minutes, 2 F-22 Raptor fighters from the 55th Wing at Offutt Air Force Base were climbing rapidly toward the emergency aircraft. Major Kevin "Shark" Thompson and Captain Jennifer "Viper" Williams were experienced pilots who had performed civilian aircraft escorts before. Chicago Center, Raptor 1 and Raptor 2 airborne and climbing to intercept United 1847, Major Thompson transmitted. Raptor flight, United 1847 is at flight level 380 with engine problems. Provide escort and assessment. As the F-22s approached their target, they prepared for what they expected to be a routine escort mission. But routine was about to become impossible. As the F-22 Raptors took position alongside United Flight 1847, NORAD Command was reviewing the passenger manifest as part of standard security procedures. What they found made Colonel Parker reach for his secure phone immediately. "Sir," reported Technical Sergeant Maria Santos, "you need to see this passenger list." "What is it?" "Passenger in seat 12F is listed as Alex Williams. But when I ran that name through our classified databases, I found something that doesn't make sense." Colonel Parker looked at the computer screen and felt his heart skip a beat. According to the classified files, Alex Williams was a test pilot with the highest security clearance in the military. But according to the passenger manifest, Alex Williams was 11 years old. "That has to be a mistake," Parker said. "Run it again." "I've run it 5 times, sir." Alex Williams, age 11, call sign Thunder, assigned to Project Hummingbird at Area 51. Top secret clearance for experimental aircraft testing. Colonel Parker stared at the information in disbelief. Project Hummingbird was one of the most classified programs in the military, involving test flights of aircraft so advanced that most generals didn't know they existed. And according to these files, the test pilot was a 6th grader. "Get me a secure line to Area 51, Parker ordered. "I need confirmation on this immediately." The call to Area 51 confirmed Parker's worst fears and greatest amazement. Alex Williams really was 11 years old, really was a test pilot, and really was aboard a commercial aircraft that was about to crash. "Colonel," said the voice from Area 51, "if that aircraft goes down with Thunder aboard, we lose our most valuable pilot and compromise our most important programs." "Understood," Parker replied. "We'll do everything we can to help them land safely." Aboard United Flight 1847, the situation was getting desperate. Both engines were now producing almost no power, and Captain Chin was struggling to keep the airplane in the air. They were losing altitude rapidly and Chicago was still too far away. "We're not going to make it to Chicago," First Officer Torres said grimly. "We need an alternate airport right now." "Offutt Air Force Base is only 20 miles away," Captain Chin replied. "But I don't know if they'll let a commercial aircraft land there." It was then that an unusual transmission came through on a military frequency that the airplane could monitor. "United 1847, this is Raptor 1. We understand you have Alex Williams aboard your aircraft. We need to speak with Thunder immediately." In seat 12F, Alex felt like she had been hit by lightning. Her secret call sign had just been broadcast over the radio, and everyone on the airplane had heard it. The businessman beside her was staring at her in confusion. "Did they just call you Thunder?" he asked in amazement. Before Alex could answer, Captain Chen's voice came over the intercom. "Alex Williams, this is Captain Chen. Could you please come to the cockpit? We need your help." Every passenger on the airplane turned to look at the 11-year-old girl in the cartoon t-shirt. They couldn't understand how a child could possibly help with an aircraft emergency, but something in the captain's voice told them this was serious. Alex unbuckled her seatbelt and walked toward the front of the airplane, knowing that her secret life was about to become very public. As Alex entered the cockpit of United Flight 1847, Captain Chin and First Officer Torres stared at her in disbelief. They had been expecting an adult pilot, not a little girl who looked like she should be in elementary school. "Are you really Alex Williams?" Captain Chin asked. "Yes, ma'am," Alex replied, her voice still sounding like a normal kid. "And you're really a pilot?" "Yes, ma'am. I test experimental aircraft for the Air Force." First Officer Torres looked at Alex skeptically. "How can an 11-year-old be a test pilot?" "Because I fit in aircraft that adults can't fly," Alex explained matter-of-factly. "And because my reflexes are faster than grown-ups." Alex looked at the instrument panel and immediately began processing the emergency situation with skills that amazed the commercial pilots. Despite her young age and small size, She analyzed the engine failures and flight conditions with the expertise of someone who had dealt with aircraft emergencies many times before. "What's our altitude?" Alex asked. 22,000 feet and descending, Captain Chin replied. "Fuel remaining?" "About 30 minutes at current consumption." "Distance to Offutt Air Force Base?" 18 miles. Alex made rapid calculations in her head, using knowledge that she had gained from flying experimental aircraft that regularly experienced total system failures. "We can make it to Offutt," she said confidently. "But we'll need to use gliding techniques that aren't taught in commercial training." "Raptor 1, this is Thunder," Alex transmitted on the military frequency using her call sign for the first time in front of civilian pilots. "Thunder, Raptor 1. Ma'am, we're honored to be working with you. What do you need from us?" Despite her young age, Alex's voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded test flights of the most advanced aircraft in the world. "Raptor Flight, I need you to coordinate with Offutt Tower for emergency landing clearance. Also, I need real-time wind and weather information for our approach." "Roger, Thunder. We have you covered." What happened next was unprecedented in aviation history. An 11-year-old girl was coordinating the emergency landing of a commercial aircraft while being escorted by two of the most advanced fighter jets ever built. "Captain Chin," Alex said, turning to the commercial pilot, "I'm going to teach you some techniques that we use for emergency landings when engines fail completely." "But you're just a kid," First Officer Torres protested. "I'm a kid who has landed aircraft with no engines, no hydraulics, and no electrical power," Alex replied calmly. "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." Captain Chin looked at Alex's serious expression and made a decision that would save 156 lives. "Okay, Alex, what do you need us to do?" As Alex worked with the United crew to prepare for an emergency landing, the F-22 pilots were learning more about the remarkable child who was saving Flight 1847. Back at NORAD Command, classified files were being reviewed that painted an incredible picture. "Raptor 1, NORAD Command," came the secure transmission. "We're sending you classified information about Thunder. You need to understand who you're working with." Major Thompson and Captain Williams received data that made them realize they were witnessing something extraordinary. Alex, "Thunder," Williams wasn't just any test pilot, she was the lead pilot for Project Hummingbird, testing aircraft that were decades ahead of anything the public knew existed. "Thunder has more flight experience than most adult pilots," the briefing explained. "She has been flying since age 9 and has successfully completed test flights that adult pilots couldn't survive." "This is incredible," Captain Williams whispered to her wingman. "Shark, we're being guided by an 11-year-old who flies aircraft that don't officially exist." "I know," Major Thompson replied. "This kid has skills that most adult pilots only dream about." The F-22 pilots watched in amazement as the commercial aircraft began flying in ways that demonstrated Alex's extraordinary abilities. What Alex did next showed why she had been chosen for the most dangerous test flights in military aviation. Using techniques developed for experimental aircraft that often lost all power, she began teaching Captain Chin how to fly a powerless Boeing 737 like a glider. "Captain Chin," Alex instructed, "forget everything you learned about engine-out procedures. We're going to fly this airplane using only gravity and aerodynamics." She guided Captain Chin through maneuvers that commercial pilots never learned, techniques for flying dead aircraft that had been developed through years of test flights with experimental planes that regularly suffered complete power loss. "Reduce our descent rate by using the airplane's natural gliding ability," Alex explained. "We don't need engines if we manage our energy correctly." "But that's not how we're trained to handle emergencies," First Officer Torres said. "Commercial training assumes you have some engine power," Alex replied. "When everything fails, you need techniques that don't depend on anything working." The F-22 pilots watched in amazement as the powerless commercial aircraft began gliding toward Offutt Air Force Base under the guidance of an 11-year-old who flew like she had been born in the cockpit. "Raptor 2, are you seeing this?" Captain Williams asked. "I can't believe what I'm watching," Major Thompson replied. "She's flying that 737 better than most pilots fly with full power." As United Flight 1847 began its final approach to Offutt Air Force Base, Alex coordinated the landing with the precision of a test flight operation. She had the F-22 escorts providing weather updates, air traffic control clearing emergency equipment, and the commercial crew implementing procedures they had never imagined. "Offutt Tower, United 1847 heavy emergency inbound with no engine power," Alex transmitted. "Be advised, we are using experimental gliding procedures. United 1847, Offutt Tower. We have crash and rescue equipment standing by. Runway 14 is cleared for your approach. But Alex knew that the approach would require more than just cleared runways. The powerless aircraft would need perfect conditions and flawless execution to land safely. Raptor Flight, Alex transmitted, I need you to monitor our glide path and call out any deviations. With no power, we won't get a second chance. Roger, Thunder. We're with you all the way down. As they descended through 5,000 feet, Alex began implementing the final phase of her emergency plan techniques that had been developed for landing experimental aircraft with total power failure. Captain Chen, she said, what I'm about to teach you isn't in any manual, but it works. We're going to land this airplane using only the laws of physics. The final approach to Offutt's runway 14 was unlike anything in commercial aviation history. Alex guided Captain Chen through a landing technique that had been developed for experimental aircraft that routinely lost all power systems. Keep our airspeed exactly at 140 knots, Alex instructed as they passed through 1,000 feet. Too fast and we'll overshoot the runway. Too slow and we'll stall and crash. The technique was so advanced that it had never been attempted with a commercial aircraft. But Alex's experience with experimental planes that regularly suffered total power loss had taught her to land aircraft that conventional procedures couldn't handle. Thunder, Raptor 1, Major Thompson transmitted. You're looking perfect on approach. Rate of descent is ideal. Thanks, Raptor 1. Captain Chen, you're doing great. Trust the airplane and trust the physics. At 200 feet, a crosswind tried to push the aircraft off the runway centerline. Captain Chen began to panic, but Alex's calm guidance kept him focused. Small correction with rudder. Don't overcorrect. Let the airplane settle naturally. The Boeing 737 touched down on the runway harder than normal, but Captain Chen managed to keep the aircraft straight and under control. As they rolled out, emergency vehicles surrounded them, ready to help any injured passengers. United 1847, outstanding job, Offutt Tower transmitted. Emergency equipment is standing by. In the passenger cabin, 156 people applauded the landing, most of them still unable to believe that they had been saved by an 11-year-old girl. As United Flight 1847 came to a stop at Offutt Air Force Base, the F-22 Raptors performed something that had never been done before in military aviation. Both pilots came to attention in their cockpits, a gesture of respect normally reserved for high-ranking officers, not children. Thunder, Raptor 1, Major Thompson transmitted. That was the most incredible display of airmanship we've ever witnessed. You just saved 156 lives using techniques that most adults couldn't master. Thanks, Raptor Flight, Alex replied, her voice still sounding like a normal kid. Just doing my job. But it wasn't just doing her job. What Alex had accomplished was extraordinary by any measure. She had taken command of a civilian aircraft emergency and used classified techniques to save 156 lives, all while maintaining the calm professionalism that had made her legendary in military test programs. As passengers deplaned, many of them stopped to thank Alex personally. The businessman from 12E was among the first. I can't believe you're really 11 years old, he said in amazement. How did you learn to fly like that? Alex smiled with the innocent expression that had helped her maintain her cover for so long. I go to a really good school. Within hours of the emergency landing, Alex's secret identity was completely exposed. News of the 11-year-old pilot who had saved a commercial flight spread around the world, and her classified work became international headlines. Kid pilot saves commercial flight, read the news stories. 11-year-old test pilot emerges from secret program, wrote journalists who were trying to understand how a child could possess such advanced flying skills. But Alex's exposure created serious problems for national security. Her work on classified programs was so sensitive that her identity had been protected at the highest levels of government. Now that cover was blown, compromising ongoing projects and potentially endangering military advantages. Alex, said General Patricia Martinez during an emergency briefing at Offutt, your actions saved 156 lives, but they also compromised some of our most important programs. I'm sorry, General, Alex replied in her small voice. But I couldn't let all those people die just to keep my secret. We're not criticizing you, General Martinez assured her. But we need to figure out what happens next. Your cover as a normal kid is obviously finished. The military faced an unprecedented situation. Their most valuable test pilot had been exposed in the most public way possible, but her actions had saved more than 150 civilian lives. 2 weeks after the United Flight 1847 incident, Alex was faced with a choice that would change her life forever. She could continue her classified test work under a new identity, or she could accept a completely different role that would utilize her skills in a public way. "Alex," said General Martinez during a meeting at the Pentagon, "we're offering you something that has never been offered to someone your age. You can become the youngest official spokesperson for aviation safety, helping to teach other pilots the techniques you used to save Flight 1847. The assignment was unprecedented. For the first time, an 11-year-old would be openly working with both military and civilian aviation authorities, using her experience to improve safety training for pilots around the world. Your actions showed that advanced flying techniques can save civilian lives, General Martinez explained. We want you to help develop training programs that will teach these techniques to commercial pilots." Alex accepted the assignment immediately. Her secret life was over, but she could now serve her country in a new way that honored both her military training and her desire to help people. "Can I still fly experimental aircraft?" Alex asked. "Even more than before," General Martinez smiled. "But now you'll also be teaching others what you've learned." 6 months after the incident, Alex was teaching special courses at the Federal Aviation Administration's training center, standing on a small platform so she could reach the podium while addressing rooms full of experienced commercial pilots. Her students were seasoned aviators with decades of experience who were learning advanced emergency procedures from an 11-year-old who had saved 156 lives. "The techniques you'll learn today," Alex told her first class of adult pilots, speaking into a microphone adjusted to her height, "were developed for aircraft that often lose all power or have systems that break completely. These procedures can save lives when normal methods don't work and when everything goes wrong at once." She used the United Flight 1847 incident as a detailed teaching example, walking the adult pilots through every decision she had made and explaining the reasoning behind techniques that had never been used in commercial aviation. "When I walked into that cockpit," she explained, using a pointer to indicate sections of aircraft diagrams on a large screen, "I had never flown a Boeing 737 before in my life. But I understood the basic physics of how to fly aircraft when everything goes wrong, and I could teach that knowledge to pilots who knew the 737 systems but had never dealt with total power failure." The adult pilots were amazed by Alex's knowledge and teaching ability. Despite her young age and the fact that she needed a step stool to write on the whiteboard, she demonstrated flying techniques and emergency procedures that surpassed anything they had learned in decades of flying careers. "Alex," asked American Airlines Captain Robert Kim, a veteran pilot with over 20,000 flight hours, "how did you learn to stay so calm during emergencies?" "Most adults would panic in situations like that. Because I've been flying aircraft that break all the time," Alex replied with the matter-of-fact honesty that only children possess, shrugging her shoulders as if she were explaining why she liked a particular flavor of ice cream. "When you expect things to go wrong constantly, you're always ready when they do. Plus, in test flying, if you panic, you die, so you learn not to panic pretty quickly." Her simple, direct answers and practical approach to complex problems made the adult pilots realize that Alex's age was actually an advantage in some ways. She could explain complicated procedures in simple terms that everyone could understand and remember under pressure. The training program that Alex developed became a model for aviation safety around the world. Airlines began sending their best pilots to learn the advanced emergency techniques that had saved Flight 1847. "Alex Williams has revolutionized aviation safety training," said International Air Transport Association Director Susan Chin. "She's teaching knowledge that could save thousands of lives." The techniques proved their value repeatedly. Within a year, commercial pilots using Alex's methods had successfully landed aircraft with failures that would previously have been impossible to survive. "We've had 5 incidents where commercial pilots used Alex's techniques to save aircraft that would have been lost," reported FAA Administrator Michael Wright. "Her program is literally saving lives every month." Alex also continued her work with experimental aircraft, but now her role allowed her to immediately share new techniques with civilian pilots when appropriate. "The barrier between military and civilian emergency procedures has been permanently changed," said test pilot Colonel Jennifer Hayes. "Alex proved that knowledge developed in classified programs can serve humanitarian purposes." 2 years after the United Flight 1847 incident, 13-year-old Alex was promoted to the youngest advisory position in Air Force history. Her mission was to continue developing emergency procedures that could be used by both military and civilian pilots. "Alex represents a new model for military service," said Air Force Chief of Staff General Robert Taylor during a ceremony at the Air Force Academy. "She demonstrates that our most advanced capabilities should serve both national security and public safety." The ceremony was attended by many of the people whose lives had been touched by Alex's actions. Captain Chin and First Officer Torres spoke about how Alex's techniques had been incorporated into United Airlines training programs. "Alex didn't just save our aircraft," Captain Chin told the assembled crowd. "She changed how our entire industry thinks about emergency procedures." Major Thompson and Captain Williams, the F-22 pilots who had escorted Flight 1847, also attended the ceremony. They were now instructors in Alex's joint training program. "Working with Thunder during that emergency was a career highlight," Major Thompson said. "She showed us that the best techniques should be available to anyone who needs them to save lives." 5 years after the incident that had changed her life, 16-year-old Alex was selected as the youngest person ever to receive the Congressional Gold Medal for her contributions to aviation safety. Her techniques were now standard training for pilots around the world, and her emergency procedures manual was required reading in dozens of countries. "Alex Williams has fundamentally changed aviation safety," said NASA Administrator Dr. Patricia Lee during the medal ceremony. "Her work has saved thousands of lives and will continue saving lives for generations." The passengers from United Flight 1847 never forgot the little girl who had saved them. Many attended Alex's medal ceremony, including the businessman who had been sitting beside her. "Alex taught me that heroes come in all ages," he said during the ceremony. "She looked like a normal kid, but she was actually one of the most skilled pilots in the world." Today, Alex "Thunder" Williams continues to serve in the Air Force while finishing her engineering degree at the Air Force Academy. At 19, she's already one of the most influential voices in both military and civilian aviation safety. Her techniques are taught at flight schools around the world, and her story inspires young people to pursue careers in aviation and military service. "The most important lesson from my experience," Alex tells students who visit her at the academy, "is that age doesn't matter when people need help. What matters is having the knowledge and courage to use it." Her office displays a photo from United Flight 1847, not of the emergency landing, but of her sitting in seat 12F with her children's book, looking like any normal kid traveling alone. It reminds her that extraordinary abilities can hide behind the most ordinary appearances. The F-22 Raptors that escorted Flight 1847 continue to fly missions around the world. But the pilots who fly them know that one of their most important missions was the day they stood at attention for an 11-year-old who proved that heroes come in all sizes. In airports around the world, passengers still board aircraft without knowing that their safety depends partly on techniques developed by someone who used to sit in seat 12F, looking like just another kid traveling to visit grandma. She was just a kid at 30,000 feet, wearing a cartoon t-shirt and reading a dragon book. But when 156 people needed help, Alex "Thunder" Williams became exactly what she had always been, a pilot whose legendary call sign commanded the respect of F-22 fighters and whose skills could save anyone brave enough to climb into an aircraft. The secret world of experimental aviation had lost its youngest and most valuable pilot. But the world of aviation safety had gained something far more important: a teacher whose knowledge could protect travelers for generations to come. This story explores how extraordinary capabilities can exist in the most unexpected people, and how true heroism means using your abilities to help others regardless of personal cost or consequence.